And okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Maestro Orlando Giovanni de Gilead, mundanely known as Dan Puppick. This is developing a fighter training program class that I've given several times over the year, and it's also a training program template that I use with my own students, both adult and youth, on rapier and CNC as well. But this the template for this fighter training program works just as well for armored combat, chivalric combat, whatever you want to call it, rattan combat, and any other martial art that you really want to apply it to. So it's really martial art agnostic. So why make a plan? So having a codified plan to follow really allows you to diagnose the plan, right? If you're unhappy with your training results, but you have no plan that you're following or no methodology that you're following, you also have no reliable method for adjusting your training. So starting off with a good plan really does help feed back into your diagnostic as well, and it also gives you something to adjust rather than just constantly reaching around in the dark. Throughout history, the most successful armies and warriors had several things in common. They had a cause they believed in, a good leadership, and a methodical approach to training. This is evident many times when armies, well-trained armies, meet with not as well-trained armies, and go figure, the well-trained army wins, even when outnumbered. Since times of ancient Greece, it was often not the largest army or the strongest warrior that won the day. More often, it was the ones who were most confident in their cause and the best trained that won. So what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to talk about the Guy Windsor's 7 Principles of Mastery. It's a very good book. If you get a chance to get a copy, it's free online. You can download the PDF from his site and print it out. And I highly recommend just about any book that Guy Windsor's written on historical martial arts. Then we're going to discuss the 5 elements of training. And then we're going to talk about how those elements and those principles feed into a continuous diagnostic cycle. So starting at sort of the high level stuff, what are the 7 principles of mastery? Well, Guy Windsor breaks down his principles into 2 areas: internal principles and his external principles. His internal principles are mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is simply placing your attention where it will do the most good. This means when you are training, that you are mindfully thinking about the training. It means when you're sparring, mindfully thinking about what you are planning to accomplish while sparring, while practicing. A good one that I always like to bring up is why do we train with our offhand? A lot of people, the first answer that they give when you ask them, why would you want to train with your non-dominant hand? They'll say, well, in case I lose my dominant hand, I'll be able to use it. And it's not a horrible answer, but really the best reason to train with your non-dominant hand is that it forces you to be more mindful about those techniques that you're performing. And then that mindfulness relates back over to your dominant hand as well. So mindfulness, flow state allows you to bring order to consciousness as opposed to the entropic chaos that it will default to otherwise. Flow state is more concerned with the process than the outcome. Identify an activity at which you are very good at getting into the flow state. Identify that point when it begins and that point when it ends, and then try to determine how to enter that flow state. Everyone has those days where they're training or they're sparring, where they have that match with somebody that doesn't seem to want to ever end. Every strike that one opponent gives, the other opponent has a perfect remedy for it, and then returns with the next strike, which is perfectly remedied by the first opponent. And this just goes back and forth for a long time. And sometimes these matches end in lots of laughing, and people sort of feel really good. That's because they've gotten into that flow state, which is actually a really good state for us to get into. And finding a way to get into that flow state is very important. Adopt useful beliefs. Your beliefs, especially those that you're not aware of, hugely influence the effectiveness of everything you do. Annoyingly, successful people are often gifted with an inherent belief in the possibility of their own success. And just listen to that. Annoyingly successful people are often gifted with an inherent belief in the possibility of their own success, or cursed by an inherent belief of their inadequacy that forces them to strive ridiculously hard. Think about some of the people that you know. We talk about annoyingly successful, right? Think about some of the people that you know that seem to win every tournament they enter, or they win Crown List, 5 times, or they win Queen's Champion constantly. If you go talk to these guys, sometimes you find that not only are they annoyingly successful, but they have this inherent belief in their own success that really forces them to strive to be their best. It's a mindset where you know that every problem can be trained past. It's a mindset where happiness is not the point. In some cases, that flow state is the point, or the continuous improvement, but actually an end point of happiness is not necessarily the point. And it's where you understand that swordmanship training, or your chosen martial art, is necessary for many people if they want to live a worthwhile life. So you actually believe in those things that you're doing, not just doing them, or doing them to achieve some end goal. Now, let's talk about the external principles. The first one the guy talks about is no injuries, which is very important. We should always train in such a way that we can continue to train tomorrow. If we are injured on a certain day, or if we know that our body is in a condition that it may get easily injured, maybe you shouldn't train that day. If we find ourselves starting to strike a little too hard, and we know that somebody's going to go home with a broken arm or a broken rib, maybe we need to take those strikes down a bit. There's no reason for anyone to get injured when they're training. You won't win the tournament if you're too injured to participate in it. The Pareto principle basically states 80% of outcomes come from 20% of causes, i.e. 80% of skill comes from about 20% of your training when you talk about martial arts. And he gives some good questions that you should ask when determining what that 20% is out of all of the 80% of the skills. So if you look at 100% of the skills that you need to have to be an excellent fighter or an excellent martial artist, what he's suggesting is you need to take just the top 20% of those. And he's got some suggestions for some questions you should ask. What is the activity supposed to accomplish? So first of all, if you decide that you need to work on your disengages, for example, or if you need to work on a wrap shot, or if you need to work on a specific strike or a cut in fendente for some reason. What is that training actually supposed to accomplish? Why would you want to worry about it, first of all? So you have to understand the training first. Then, does it actually do that thing that you think it does? Can you test the outcomes of this activity? A lot of people do the 100 strikes a day sort of a drill where they challenge everybody. You know, I'm going to go to the Pell and I'm going to hit it 100 times every day. Has anybody asked themselves, does that actually accomplish anything? What are the goals of the thing that you're doing? Will just doing 100 strikes a day at the Pell actually improve anything that you need to improve? Is there a better way to accomplish the same thing? And then finally, you know, is that accomplishment actually useful? So is it actually something that you need to train on? This is a good one to think about, because often, especially in the SCA, we do have a lot of non-codified training opportunities where people go out and they'll have pickup fights, and then some, you know, MOD or a White Scarf or a Grand Duke or somebody comes along and they say to you, hey, you know, the way you're holding your sword, you need to hold it this other way, and you should really think about snapping your wrist this certain way when you land that strike. And then they walk off. They've never met you before in their life, and they're just giving you this advice. Sometimes they give great advice. Many times they're just giving advice to give advice. So you have to go back and really ask yourself, you know, is the thing that someone just suggested to me really the thing that I should be working on? So next principle of mastery, run a diagnostic. And this is something important that we're going to talk about here as we move on towards the 5 elements. At every stage of your training, you are either running a diagnostic to find out what you should focus on, or working on fixing the one weakest link. It is a cycle that goes diagnose, fix, ad infinitum, you know, forever. You should always be diagnosing what you're doing and then working on a fix for it. There's no good reason to work on skills that you haven't diagnosed as being a skill that you need to work on. And there's also no good reason to work on skills, if we go with the Pareto principle, which is, you know, work on the top 20%. So diagnose and then work on the top 20%. And then finally, this is probably the most important one, and this is the one that I think folks in the SCA internalize the most compared to some groups that I work with, even if they haven't ever put it in these words, and that's distinguish between knowledge and skill. Knowing how to do a particular technique is not the same as being able to do it. So distinguish between knowledge and skill. Is that person highly skilled, or is that person highly knowledgeable? Are you highly skilled, or are you just highly knowledgeable? Both have their place, but you should know the difference between the two. Okay, any questions before I move on about the 7 principles of mastery? I don't see anything in the chat so far. We're still early on, so there'll be plenty of opportunities to ask questions as we move forward. So let's talk about the 5 elements of training. My students hear about this a lot. I like to break all of my training objectives down into one of these 5 categories, or 5 elements, as I call them. And well, let me go back to that real quick. You guys, you'll see I like to use this neat little Roman Greek building picture here to sort of underscore how athleticism is really the foundation And then you've got your three pillars of lizard brain, logical brain, and muscle memory, and then integration, which is really the combination of all of the other elements, is really the roof of your structure. So let's talk about those 5 elements here more specifically. Okay, so lizard brain training goals that fall into the lizard brain category are all about improving awareness, reaction time, pattern recognition, repeatedly performing correct actions in reaction to nearly chaotic inputs, right? Some examples might be tempo and timing drills, reaction time drills, pattern recognition drills, sometimes pattern recognition sparring as well, right? Drills for measure, or what some call range, to help you in determining your range. A drill that we do often is wall drills. We'll put a fighter up against the wall, and then another fighter faces off with them. The fighter on the wall cannot move backwards or forward. One foot has to stay on the wall at all times, and we simply feed them various shots at various tempos to see where their weak points are. And then as we find their weak points, that's our diagnostic, we'll start working that one area until we find a proper guard or a proper set of reactions or a proper remedy that they can use. And then once we figure out what that proper remedy is, we'll spend a good 20 minutes or so continuously working that one remedy to get the muscle memory and to get the lizard brain drilled in. So the principle that really feeds the most into the lizard brain element is flow. Now, as I go through all of these, feel free to take the 5 elements of training and redefine them for yourself, redefine what principles you believe feed into each of these elements, and what training goals feed into these. These are just examples of how you can organize around these 5 elements. So logical brain. Logical brain is deliberately studying techniques, training new combinations, diagnosing, and working out solutions. Some examples of what you might do: training remedies and counterattacks, right? Study and train to provoke your opponent. This is a really common drill that I have a lot of my students work on. It's not as much of a drill as it is a technique of sparring. So while they're sparring, I tell them to take a certain percentage of their sparring time and just work on cataloging what it is you can provoke your opponent to do. If you throw a strike to their right shoulder, do they parry it by taking their tip-off line? Do they parry it using a beat? Do they void out of the way? What is it you can do? And then can you make them do that 3 times in a row using that same strike? One point to that, the provocations, is that for a split second, when you've provoked your opponent to purposefully do something, then you're controlling the fight. If you can string those provocations together, then you can control the fight for longer periods of time. So those are the kinds of things you think about with the logical brain. You sort of war game how you can do these things. And the logical brain, at the end of the day, is really feeding back into the lizard brain, because those things that you come up with in the logical brain, you then want to train your lizard brain to do. Watching videos is a great way of working your logical brain. Studying manuals and different techniques. The 3 principles I identified for the logical brain are adopt useful beliefs. It helps you adopt useful beliefs. This is primarily when you are running your diagnostics, is using your logical brain, and then distinguishing between knowledge and skill. This is when you're working this element of training, you really are distinguishing between knowledge and skill, and you're increasing your knowledge in a lot of ways too. Muscle memory, also known as muscle mechanics. to a lot of people. With muscle memory, you're basically training your muscles to move and flow naturally. I often tell people when they start with rapier or other martial arts or armored combat that they are not born with a sword in their hand. And so it will feel awkward when you first start. But that's no reason to fall back on those things, those skills that feel comfortable. You should train those things that feel uncomfortable until they're comfortable. And that's what muscle memory is. It's just like training a part in your hair. It's something that your body doesn't do naturally. You are training it to do those things. And some examples: point control drills, doorknob drills, working on different strikes at the pell, footwork drills. And the main principles that I lump into this element of training are the principles of flow and no injuries. Next is athleticism. This is probably for the vast majority of fighters in the SCA. This is probably the least understood or the least used of the 5 elements. This is the one that gets ignored the most. It really means deliberately improving your muscle strength, speed, and stamina. And you should focus on adding resistance when you're working on your athleticism. Some things to look at are improving your quickness. I use the term quickness way more than I use the term speed, because in general, quickness to me combines both your speed and your sense of timing. Often a person's sense of timing or their sense of their opponent's movement can simulate speed, and I call this quickness. And so working on those things, shadow boxing, speed bags, sprints, training with some sort of resistance. Some people will put a weight on their wrist as they train their blade work. Some people will put resistance bands on their arm as they train their blade work. Germanicus, I think you were asking about with youth, resistance bands and blade work are a very common technique that I use with my younger fencers, and it works for both cut-oriented and thrust-oriented systems. So I think that it's something you might want to think about also including with some of your training recommendations. Endurance is a big one. Running, elliptical. The principle that I really stress the most in athleticism is no injuries. So don't train so hard that you can't go out and practice any of the other elements of training because you're sore for 2 weeks straight. So understand your body and don't overdo it. Sometimes you have to build up to the highest level of weight or build up to running, a 5K, run a quarter mile first and then work on a half mile, then a mile. So don't try to overdo it because you can injure yourself, or at least put yourself out of the game for a while. And then finally, there's integration. With integration, we really talk about tying together all the other 4 elements of training. And this means things like mindful sparring, going out sparring with a purpose, going to tournaments, combination drills that combine multiple techniques. And with integration, there's 4 principles I really put in this category, and that's mindfulness, flow, run a diagnostic, and no injuries. So do we have any questions so far? Oh, I see one in the chat. Will you explain Smear the Peacock? So Smear the Peacock is an interesting game that we play at the end of while we were still having practices, we were playing at the end of many of our practices. it is a high energy game. It's a melee game, but most importantly, it's very high energy and it's a good workout. So what we would do, and this was in Rapier, we would split into two teams. One team gets the left wall and another team gets the right wall. And the walls are that team's res point, and they get unlimited resurrections. And then in the middle of the court, we toss in what we call the peacock. And it's most often somebody's cloak. So we toss in a cloak to the middle of the field. And the goal for each team is to get the cloak to the opposing team's wall. And you score a point when you touch the wall, game resets, and you start over again. And that's the only thing that resets the game because it's unlimited resurrections. And it ends up being a really high energy game. People start pushing the peacock around on the floor with their swords, like they're playing hockey. People will grab the peacock and throw it back to somebody behind them, and then they do an end run around to try and get to the goal. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to really work on quickness and endurance and all of those other things in athleticism. So I really highly recommend it.
It's also a really good way to work on your melees because you have to learn to read your opponent's lines, and you have to learn to be able to communicate with the other members on your team.
Yes, it's true. It really is a great communications tool and small unit tactics tool, because each team will assign a captain. And for the kids, when I do this with the kids, we have it. It's much more codified, and we'll have them actually appoint like who their hunter-killer team is, who their main guard element is going to be, who their peacock bearer is going to be, who their backup peacock bearer is going to be. So it's actually a great game to play to work on leadership skills, melee skills, communication, all of those things, as well as it's an intense workout. I know that just being on COVID, I've gained a lot of weight, mostly because we're not playing Smear the Peacock every week. So good question. Any other questions before I move on? No? Okay, good deal. It's either really boring material or I'm a really good presenter. That's why there's no questions. Okay, so let's talk about the diagnostic cycle. So a major, one of the most important principles for this entire system is running that diagnostic and having a diagnostic cycle. And from a big picture perspective, it's really run the diagnostic, fix it, and then run another diagnostic. Attempt to fix the problems, run another diagnostic. Here, I'm just breaking it down a little more. Yeah, it does look like something you would have at work, right? So, and remember, this is, nobody should be sitting there, pulling out a printout of this slide and checking off each step that they run through. This is more of a conceptual understanding of how you would apply these principles, not necessarily a checklist for what you should do. Your particular diagnostic cycle for yourself may have 5 steps. It may have 6 steps. It may have only 2 steps. You may not completely understand what steps it is, but this is just a basic conceptual breakdown. So first you run the diagnostic, right? Diagnostic, review your form, performance while sparring, at tournaments, determine what went wrong, and using the 5 elements of training, determine your specific shortcomings. And it's really important that you have someone help and try to keep a log. I know not everybody does keep a log, but try to keep a log. Yes, I do have suggestions for tools to help with diagnostics. The biggest tool is to have somebody help. And then the second biggest tool, for me at least, is to have a defined set of skills that you're grading yourself against. Now, I know that seems like high ceremony to a lot of the SCA crowd, and everyone might have something different, but I'll show you at the end of this the set of skills that I use in training rapier and cut and thrust. And I don't think that you have to use any one person's set of skills. You can come up with your own. But if you do have a defined list of skills, I want to work on outer voids, inner voids. I want to work on 4 strikes at strata, 4 strikes at larga. You know, if you have all of these different sets of skills that you believe you should be good at, it gives you a better way to diagnose what went wrong. And having a vocabulary, a common vocabulary that you, the person you're fighting, and the person that's helping you diagnose can discuss this also helps a lot. So yeah, good question. Does that make sense? Hope that answered that. Okay. Second step, apply the Pareto principle, right? Use your diagnostic notes to determine what skills, drills, etc. you need or want to work on, and then ask these questions about each of those. So you've made this list. You and whoever's helping you, or you and your teacher or your mentor or whatever you've got has helped you make this list of things that you need to work on. Ask the questions, and then take the top 20% that make the cut and forget about the other 80%. Just take the 20% that you and your partner in crime or your teacher or whoever it is determine are your 20% must work on, and forget about the other 80%. And then the next step is develop the plan. Take those 20% and organize them into a weekly training schedule that you can actually follow. And then have somebody, probably that same person from step 1, take a look at your plan and give you a sanity check on it. Share it with somebody else. If you make a plan that you're not willing to share, then you're probably not going to execute it anyway, or it's not going to be a good plan. Because finally, then execute the plan. Exercise, drill, spar, whatever the plan calls for, do it. And then start all over again. Run another diagnostic. At that point, you're not just developing a plan, but you're also refining your plan. So step 1 is develop a plan. The second run of this cycle and the third run and the fourth are usually just going to be you refining the existing plan that you already have. But you may scrap it and decide that your 20% is something completely new. Okay, any other questions on the diagnostic cycle before I move on to an example of a training plan? No? Okay. So here's a sample training plan that I put together. You'll notice that I've broken down each of the things I want to kind of do into days of the week, and then which category or which element of training they sort of fall into. The reason I like doing it this way is for 2 reasons. I can very quickly look and see if I am either putting too much emphasis on one element of training or not enough emphasis on another element of training. Or I can look and say, hey, muscle memory, man, I've been doing this 20 years. I've got the muscle memory down. I can probably do a little less of that and put a little bit more of my time into athleticism or integration. So it gives you a way to sort of get a big picture of where you're going to be spending your training energy. And then by having the days of the week, you can look at it, you be like, okay, so I really think that on Thursday, I'm going to do sparring and core exercises, or Wednesday, I'm really going to do all that stuff on Wednesday. Maybe I need to rejigger this a little bit and be more realistic about my training expectations. Or maybe I look at it and I say, yeah, this is what I really want to do. This is really where I want to put my focus. Maybe I need to play World of Warcraft a few less hours a week, and I could do more of this stuff. So that's why I like putting it on a grid like this, because you can now very quickly look at this and decide, is this something I can do? And am I focusing on the areas? If I look at my 20%, am I focusing on the areas that really fit into what I need to do to meet that 20% goal? And if not, take it off. If it falls into that 80%, if it doesn't fall into the 20%, forget about it. Take it off and just focus on that top 20%. So, any questions on the weekly training plan?
Sure, I'll try it. So when you're saying like on Tuesdays sparring, it's all just one bout of sparring, so to speak. It's just what you're thinking about while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Different times. Great.
Yeah. If I plan on sparring twice on Tuesday, I might put there, sparring in the morning, and then another one I'll say sparring in the evening, or something like that.
Great. I mean, as much as we all want to spar every day, all day, right? But yeah, makes sense.
This could be golf wars, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, golf wars go down. There are some people that go to golf. I've had golf wars where I don't go out on any of the melees. I just go hang out at the field and do pickup fights for a week. Sometimes that's what you really want to do. You do that. So other times I never get a single pickup fight at golf wars. So, but yeah, no. If I didn't want to make the grid too much bigger. So whenever there's outliers like that, like if the sparring is going to be broken up into different, you can just add extra notes into those columns, I think, to sort of identify it, because this is really more to give you the big picture of where you're going to be spending your effort. Good question. What's another question out there? Anybody else? No? Okay. And you can very easily just print something like this out and pencil stuff in every week. It doesn't have to be, or, if you've got a something that a format that works better for you, then you can do that as well. Okay, references, further reading. Really, the only main reference was stuff I've done for the last 30 years and Guy Windsor's 7 Principles of Mastery. So we've got 15 minutes left. What are any other questions, comments, input, discussion? You guys notice there's 5 Lanchknechts, right? 5 principles, 5 Lanchknechts. I know Perrin noticed that right away.
Yeah. So is the drumming one the mastery one, or
I don't know. I thought it. I'm pretty sure the flute is the logical brain, and I think the drumming is the muscle memory.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not sure what the other guys are.
Hey, I'm all for that. Letting the muscle memory be the drummer. Hey, I'm all about drumming.
Yeah, I love drumming. Actually, drumming is a good way to figure out where it is that your flow state starts and ends. I've often done that because I'm not nearly the talented musician that you are, Carl. So for me, like when I can get into a flow state with drumming, I feel like I have really accomplished something. and like,
it's pretty much the same whatever skill level you're at. When you get into that flow state, everything just seems so much easier. It seems so much better.
Yep.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, no, it is. It's finding that happy place.
Exactly.
Oh, we got something on the chat here. Hold on. Okay, perhaps I'm not understanding completely part of the Pareto principle, but how do you go about figuring out what the 20% is that you need to keep? That's actually a good question. So I believe that the best answer to that is that you figure out that 20% by prioritizing those skills that you think you need to work on. So I'm gonna bring up, like, I promised this that I would show off my skills sheet that I've got here, and so I think I will do that. Maybe. And anybody that wants a copy of this, I can send it out to them as well. I have a massive library of all kinds of course it's, here we go. Rapier skills cheat sheet. So this is for Bjorn's question. So I went through a lot of trouble years ago to start breaking down all of these things that I consider skills into 5 different levels. I like the number 5 for some reason, and then sort of breaking them into areas like footwork or measure or tempo. But to be honest with you, like, I change this list on an almost weekly basis, because I consider this my personal list, and I consider that it evolves. I consider everything is an evolutionary process rather than a fixed state. So every year I may decide that whatever I was thinking of the year before, I hated it or whatever. And so I've got the date and the initial thing on there because I use it for youth training. So for them, I try not to confuse them with all of this, yeah, it's an evolving list stuff. I'm just like, yeah, these are the skills you should work on. Go work on them. But for adult fencers and armored combatants, I think the idea that your skills, the skills you want to work on, is a ever-changing thing. So this is a full, complete list of them. Right. But then what I'll do then is, now that I have a common vocabulary for my skills, I can name the thing, so if we're diagnosing my fight and somebody says, oh, when he attacked that way, you should have voided to the right, and that would have given you a better angle of attack, as well as getting your head out of the way of his sword. And I'm like, oh, maybe I need to work on voids. Do you think that would? And so we'll have a discussion over that, right? And so if we determine, hey, voids are what I need to work on, well, voids are on here. So I just look at what voids I want to work on, and then I might even have a set of drills that I want to work on. Then I'll go back to my weekly schedule, and I'll figure out where I can fit voids in there. And you can see, like, right here, I've got voids at Larga at the Pell listed right there, and then that's, that becomes something I work on. So I think you have to have at least a basic agreement about what the variety of skills are. And by the way, sometimes you'll determine that there's a new skill. There's something you never actually named. It's like finding a new species of animal, right? And you're like, oh, we need to give this a name. I'll call this the Carl attack, or something like that. And but it could happen, right? That you determine there's a new skill that you had never thought of. You can add that to your list, and then you can start thinking about ways to work on it. So either way, I digress. The 20%. So now that you've got a common vocabulary, you can list all the skills that you think you need to work on, and then you take and organize them in priority. What's the most important one? And how you determine priority is up to you. But for me, it would be that skill that is making me die most often, or keeping me alive the most, probably gets a higher priority than something like, hey, maybe I could have used a Volta there or something, or, some other arcane movement that looks good on the field, but maybe isn't, really a common sense thing to do if you're not good at it. So that's how you sort of organize those skills. Then you take the top 20% once you prioritize them. So, most important to least important, then chop off the top 20%, throw away the others. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I kind of rambled there. Okay, good deal. Okay, so any other questions? These are good questions, guys. Do we have any other questions about the 5 elements of training? Man, you can, if you take this, you can take and redefine all the different things. A lot of this stuff here is rapier centric. If you're a chivalric armored combatant, you can take and replace all the examples there with things that would make more sense to people in your specific school or style of training. So it doesn't have to fit. I know a lot of what I use is sprinkled in with lots of Italian words that confuse people. So so you can just put in there, instead of strata, for example, on the chivalric range, strata is basically is A range or B range in the chivalric field. So, I just like calling it strata because that was the Italian conceptualization of it. Profeta, strata, and larga. Larga is C range, profeta is A range. So, but it's not important which vocabulary you use. It is important to have a vocabulary, in my opinion. Man, no other questions? Comments?
Orlando, if I may, this has been excellent and exactly what I needed to kind of get an idea on organizing training rather than let's just show up, let's try a little of this and a little of that, both for Shiv, which is what I do, and then again for the youth combat kids, which is both rapier and armored. This is excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And one vocabulary, it's something to think about too with the FCA. Think about, we do such a good job of trying to define very detailed training vocabularies and sets of skills for melee, right? Every year when everybody's starting to get ready for Golf Wars, you see all these lists of melee commands, small unit tactics, classes, all this other stuff. But don't we sometimes do a really poor job of putting that same codification to individual training, and person's individual fighting plan. So that's really where I tried to fill in the gap with this, So cool. I'm glad you guys got something out of this. I'm going to go ahead and give everybody 5 minutes back that they can get ready for their next class that they're going to. I really, 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 really appreciate this. I appreciate all the folks from Northkeep for hosting and putting this together. Winter Kingdom is almost always one of my favorite events of the year. It's definitely in my top 3 out of the year. So I'm glad we were able to do this virtually, and you guys have a great day and stay safe out there, everybody.
Thanks a lot,
thanks
Orlando.
so much.
You have a good one.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Yeah, and I'm stealing this stuff.
Thank you. Giving away all my stuff.
You like it.